It doesn't matter what custom you've got. It doesn't matter what holy thing that you worship and adore. The gays are going to get it. They're going to make you conform to them. You're going to say you like anal sex, you like oral sex, you like big.
That is Pat Robertson. If you've never heard of the guy, I envy you. This is one of the guys that turned the Republican Party into what it is today. Turned it into effectively an arm of fundamentalist Christianity. He's responsible for it largely. Him and another person, Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell Sr., this guy right here. We're going to talk about Pat Robertson's legacy tonight because, as it turns out, he died recently. Now, I don't wish death upon anybody. Rather than wishing Pat Robertson were dead or being glad that he's dead or that Jerry Falwell Sr. is dead, instead of that, I would rather wish that they had been better people when they were alive. Wish that they hadn't set out to destroy everything that this country stood for in favor of their extremist ideology and largely succeeded. So I want to talk about his legacy, Pat Robertson. Since he has died, let's talk about what he stood for in life. First clip I got for you is from 1980. This is Pat Robertson predicting the end of the world in 1982.
Why is Israel so important? I mean, what is it about this little bitty country that sits right down in the middle of, like, you know, you can't hardly find, they can't even put the name on it, had to put it out in the ocean. What makes it so important?
Now, God has called this in the Bible the navel of the earth. Now, a navel is sort of like the place where a child is attached to its mother, and God used this as the place where He entered into human history. And that's why all the world, the United Nations and the nations of the earth, one day are going to come and move against Israel. In I'd give it 1982, but date setting is dangerous. I'd say within the next couple of years, we're going to see a war there. The next major war to be fought in the world is going to be right here.
So you may not have picked up on that if you don't follow this stuff super closely, but the belief is that there's going to be a war, and that war is going to take place in the Middle East, and it's going to end up in Israel ultimately, and that's going to spark Armageddon, basically. It's the battle of Gog of Magog. In fact, that's what George Bush Jr., George W. Bush, or is that his name? George H.W. Bush? I don't remember. The younger one. George Bush Jr., that's what he said to the French Prime Minister when requesting their assistance in Iraq. He told the French Prime Minister that this is the battle of Gog of Magog, of biblical proportions. He believed he's about to spark Armageddon. The Iraq War was a religious war largely. Quick interjection. I won't take long. I just wanted to tell you guys, YouTube's algorithm operates off of a few factors. Watch time, whether or not you subscribe, and whether or not you like something. So if you really want to help my channel, I would appreciate it if you guys watch the video to the end. If you don't watch it to the end, just watch a little bit longer than you would have otherwise. I would appreciate that very much. All right, let's get back to the video. Now, Pat Robertson was also absolutely obsessed with the idea that there was going to be a war in the Middle East and that that war was going to spark Armageddon. I mean, obviously he was wrong. He continued on to make, like, failed prediction after failed prediction after failed prediction, up to and including prophesying that Donald Trump was going to win the 2020 election. He prophesied it. Said God told him Trump is going to win the 2020 election. That's what he said. I have it on recording. We're going to take a look. But first, let's continue on with his legacy. September 13th, 2001, 2 days after the 9/11 attacks happened, Jerry Falwell Sr. and Pat Robertson go on Pat Robertson's show, the 700 Club, to talk about what happened about the attacks on the World Trade Centers. Again, two people that are responsible for the fundamentalism and the extremism in the Republican Party. These are the guys that set out to take control of the Republican Party and turn it into an arm of evangelicalism. And they're sitting here talking, along with Billy Graham. He contributed to it too. Listen to what they had to say here.
This is the first time that we've been attacked on our soil. First time, and by far, the worst results. And I fear, as Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, said yesterday, that this is only the beginning, and with biological warfare available to these monsters, the Husseins, the Bin Ladens, the Arafats, what we saw on Tuesday, as terrible as it is, could be minuscule if in fact God continues to lift the curtain and allow the enemies of America to give us probably what we deserve.
Wow. That's pretty serious. He says God lifted the veil of protection on the United States because we are doing something to deserve it, right? God allowed this attack on the United States because of something. What? What did we do? Who is to blame for this attack, really? Pat and Jerry?
Well, Jerry, that's my feeling. I think we've just seen the antechamber to terror. We haven't even begun to see what they can do to the major population.
The ACLU's got to take a lot of blame for this.
The American Civil Liberties Union, the people who have only ever fought for civil liberties, the guys that will defend anybody if it means protecting civil liberties, up to and including the KKK, protecting their right to march through a town and peacefully protest. These are the people that you think are like the root of all evil? He thinks the ACLU is evil because they bring suits against the people like this, against fundamentalist extremist Christians, to prevent them from trampling on people's rights. He wants the ability to trample on people's rights, and he doesn't like that that's being stifled by the ACLU. So he's blaming the ACLU and a bunch of others he's about to list for 9/11. Says the fact that they even exist is enough for God to lift the veil of protection. That is psychotic.
To the major population.
The ACLU's got to take a lot of blame for this.
Oh, yes.
And I know I'll hear from them for this, but throwing God, or successfully with the help of the federal court system, throwing God out of the public square, out of the schools.
That did not happen. None of this happened.
The abortionists have got to bear some burden for this, because God will not be mocked, and when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies.
Okay, that number keeps going up and keeps changing. There is no way to actually know how many abortions have taken place. But for the record, the Bible is pro-abortion. The Bible's in favor of it. Why are they against it? There's a verse, I think it's Numbers 5:11-18, if you want to look it up. The test for an unfaithful wife. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just give you a couple of highlights. If a man suspects that she has been unfaithful, even if she isn't impure, then he's to take his wife to the priest, must take an offering of a tenth of a something, or ephah of barley flour on her behalf. So basically pay the priest to give her something called bitter water, which aborts the baby, basically. This is prescribed in the Bible for an unfaithful wife. If you think your wife is cheated, you should get an abortion. Why are these people talking about abortionists causing 9/11? This belief is unconnected to reality, unconnected to what the Bible actually says. They're fundamentalists who don't understand the fundamentals of what they're talking about. Okay, so the ACLU and abortionists are to blame. Go on. Let him cook. Let him cook. Maybe he's got more to say.
Innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way.
Wow, dude. Who did he just list? Gays, lesbians, abortionists, People for the American Way. By the way, People for the American Way is the parent company of Right Wing Watch. I cover Right Wing Watch a lot, if you've seen their Twitter account or whatever. Wow, this dude just hates everybody and wants to blame them for 9/11 with a completely straight face, without a hint of irony. The guy's blaming all of these people for 9/11.
The ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
Well, I totally concur.
Well, that's Pat Robertson totally concurring. Thank you, Pat and Jerry. Now, Jerry Falwell was a monstrously evil person, and the things that he did and the things that he said and that he endorsed and his goals in life were monstrously disgusting. He started a Liberty University. I don't know if you guys knew that. Pat Robertson was also a monstrously disgusting person. Like I said, I don't wish death on anybody. I wish that they would have been better people in life. And I think that the United States political system is not as susceptible to being damaged today as it was yesterday because Pat's not here. I'm sorry. His effect on society was detrimental. Both Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson's effect were detrimental. Let me show you another example. This is from 2013. Listen to what Pat Robertson had to say here.
You know what they do in San Francisco, some of the gay community, they want to get people, so if they've got the stuff
Being HIV. This is 2013. He's saying if gay people have HIV in San Francisco, okay, go on.
They want to get people, so if they've got the stuff, they'll have a ring, you shake hands, and the ring's got a little thing where you cut your finger.
Really?
No, not really. This is made up completely.
Where you cut your finger?
Really?
Yeah, really. I mean, it's that kind of vicious stuff, which would be the equivalent of murder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would. If that had ever happened in the history of ever, that's completely made up right off the top of his head. Or here's an alternative. Is there somebody in Pat's inner circle who is feeding him nonsensical garbage 24/7? What an absolutely absurd thing to say. To believe that gay people are wearing rings that prick somebody when they shake hands to give them HIV, really. It's beyond a psychotic thing to say or think or believe. But that's Pat Robertson for you. You know what else he believed? I don't have any clips of him saying this because they were all really, really long, and I only have so much time. But he also believed that physical objects could be possessed by demons. And this is actually something that Jehovah's Witnesses have in common with Pat Robertson. I grew up Jehovah's Witness. I'm no longer Jehovah's Witness. But it's more of like an urban legend or I guess you'd call it like a Jehovah's Witness urban legend, that things can be possessed by demons. I don't know if there's anything specific in the literature, but every Jehovah's Witness has heard the Smurf story, where a Smurf doll is possessed by a demon. And they know not to go shopping at yard sales. Just about every Jehovah's Witness. Again, some of them do. Some of them disregard that. It's not official or in the literature. It's just kind of an urban legend that's spread from person to person over the years. You get an object, you buy a tape recorder or Talk Boy or whatever they're selling. Pogs. I don't know what they have nowadays at yard sales. You buy these things at a yard sale. You bring it home, and before you know it, something bad happens in your life. You lose your job, or your kid gets in a fight at school or whatever. It's the Pogs. They're demon-possessed. Pat Robertson really believed that. Really. He believed that things were demon-possessed, objects, just like Jehovah's Witnesses. Check this one out. Early June 2015.
From Jane, who says, a coworker confronted me in the break room and said she can't believe in a God who let her baby of 3 years old die, suffering a long battle in and out of hospitals while he heals other children. She asked me, why did God allow my baby to die? I told her that I didn't know why her child died, but God sees the whole picture. We see only in part. What else can I say?
Okay, so this woman had basically lost her 3-year-old child, and she told a coworker this, and the coworker is a religious nutcase that watches Pat Robertson, and said she didn't know how to respond. So Pat Robertson's going to give us some insight into how you respond to somebody who just lost a child. It's going to get ugly.
But God sees the whole picture. We see only in part. What else can I say?
Now, as far as God's concerned, he knows the end from the beginning, and he sees a little baby, and that little baby could grow up to be Adolf Hitler. He could grow up to be Joseph Stalin.
Oh boy, please don't tell anybody this. Oh my God, dude. That's a quick way to get punched. Somebody just lost their 3-year-old child, and you go up to them and say, God knows what that baby was going to grow up to be. It could be that your baby was going to be like Hitler. It's possible. Maybe you think maybe that's why God let your 3-year-old baby die? Because he's going to grow up to be like Hitler? Please don't tell anybody that. I can't believe that this dude said stuff like this. Is like a common occurrence, okay? I have 16 clips of this guy saying stuff like this. All through the years, he didn't change one bit. He continued to falsely prophesy. He continued to claim that gay people try to infect others with AIDS. He claimed that, babies could be Hitler, could grow up to be Hitler or whatever later on in life. It's insane. And he never changed his position for a second.
Grow up to be Joseph Stalin. He could grow up to be some serial killer, or he could grow up to die of a hideous disease. God sees all that. And for that life to be terminated while he's a baby, he's going to be with God forever in heaven. So that isn't a bad thing. So how could God do that? How could a good God let that happen? Well, the good God is going to take that baby to heaven right now, and that isn't a bad thing.
My grandfather, my mom's dad, before my mom was born, he had a baby. It was his firstborn. It was a boy. Had a child with my grandma. Named him after himself. It was John the First, John the Second. And they absolutely loved that baby. This is back in 1940, 1945, somewhere in there. And the baby got pneumonia at 3 months old and died in the hospital. 3 months old. Now, my grandfather was a Sunday school teacher. He was a deep, deep believer. So when his baby died, my Uncle John, when he died, my grandfather went to the pastor of the church that he was a Sunday school teacher at, and he said, why would God allow this to happen? Effectively the same question being asked by this woman on Pat Robertson's program. And you know what the preacher said? God needed another angel in heaven. Exactly what Pat Robertson just said. And from that day forward, my grandfather professed to be an atheist. My grandfather never set foot in a church another day in his life until his funeral. This is the worst thing that you can say to somebody in this situation. This is not a type of situation where you want to tell them God needed another angel. And to make it even worse, Pat Robertson says, who knows, maybe the baby would have grown up to be Hitler. I mean, it's so messed up that it's comical at a certain point, right? Like, you cannot help but laugh because it's so absurd. That's Pat Robertson for you. Just a quick note, a pro tip for you, a life pro tip. Don't tell people who've lost a child that God needed another angel. That doesn't help. It only hurts. Trust me. It only hurts. Listen to this one. Early April 2015. This is Pat Robertson telling you what people who are living the gay lifestyle choice are trying to push on you. God, I hope I censored this one because it gets graphic.
It doesn't matter what custom you've got. It doesn't matter what holy thing that you worship and adore. The gays are going to get it. They're going to make you conform to them. You're going to say you like sex, you like oral sex, you like you like anything you can think of to whatever it is, and sooner or later you're going to have to conform your religious beliefs to the group of some aberrant thing. It won't stop at homosexuality.
Wow, dude. That is absolutely unglued from reality. So the gay people in society aren't going to stop it being gay. They're going to force you to like different forms of stuff, right? And eventually it's going to end at animals, apparently, according to Pat Robertson. That's their ultimate goal. You know what's interesting? This is absolutely disgusting and false, obviously. I don't think I even need to say that, but I'm going to put it on record just in case. But what I find really interesting about this is that this is the exact propaganda technique that the KKK was using back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s against the black community. The same technique. Do you know what they were saying when the integration was an issue on the forefront? Like, everybody was paying attention to integration. You know what the KKK was telling people? If you allow schools to be integrated, if you allow black people to be part of a white people's school, before you know it, they're going to force your children to marry black people. That's the next logical step in integration. Forced marriage to a black person. This is a case study on a black family moving into a neighborhood in the 1950s. The Myers is the black family's name. It was previously against the law for this family to live in this neighborhood, And when it was finally legalized, this black family moved in.
Being for Myers can be
Right. The family was named the Myers, FYI.
Being for Myers can be difficult if one's background rejects this decision.
Some of the people are definitely against integration. And they have told my children that they have to marry. And my child doesn't even know what a is, but from the sound, it has scared them, and they have come home just crying.
So, right there, perfect example. I mean, this was so ridiculously common in the 50s and the 60s, even in the 70s. This is the propaganda technique that the KKK has used. And you know what? 1950s all the way to now, let's see, how many years is that? Somewhere in the vicinity of 70, right? How old was Pat Robertson in the 1950s? He was about 20 years old, wasn't he? 25 maybe? Was he one of those people wandering around telling the children that they were going to have to marry black people? They're going to be forced to? The boomer generation of today is the children from this film. The boomer generation grew up in this environment, being told things like, you're going to be forced to marry a black person. How do you feel about that? The children were propagandized to turn them against the black community. Now, racism is not a popular thing. It's not popular to be racist in society today, except among boomers. It's a mindset that has infected an entire generation because of the KKK, because they used these techniques to scare the shit out of children during integration. They spread it around as much as they could to make children fear the black community and do anything they could to stay separate from them. That's what it was all about. Was Pat Robertson one of those people spreading it around? Or was he one of the people that it was told to, you're going to have to marry a black person? I just about guarantee that he was adjacent to that talking point, to that propaganda technique at some point, because he's giving us the exact same propaganda right now about gay people that was used in the 1950s, and he's about 20 years old, about black people. Same propaganda technique. He's telling us gay people are going to force you to like this or that, or be with animals or whatever other thing. Is any of this sounding familiar?
Stop at homosexuality. We've got what's called polyamory. Well, what about that? Well, what about polygamy, where you've got multiple wives? How can we say that one is constitutional and the other's not? And then, as you say,
honestly, you got a point. How can we say one is constitutional, the other's not? I agree. Allow people to get married the way they want to get married. A marriage is nothing more than a legal contract, okay? Let people sign the contract if they want. Consenting adults should be allowed to sign any contract that they want, as long as they're fully informed and they're not being unduly influenced by somebody or something. If they are going in with eyes open and they are consenting adults, they should be allowed to do whatever. But I honestly, I'm not polygamous at all. I'm probably one of the most monogamous people alive. But I have no problem with polygamy. Let them do it. Why do you care? Seriously, why do you care about people being gay? Why do you care about gay marriage? I don't understand it. Why did he go on a crusade against gay people and gay marriage? It's like what defined his life practically. That and false prophecies about the end coming. I guess that one probably might, the prophecies might eclipse the anti-gay stuff. I'm not sure which is bigger.
You say, what's so terrible about having with animals? Well, that's going to come next. You watch it down the road, and Christians are going to be saying, well, you're intolerant, you're trying to mitigate against these nice people who like dogs. What's wrong with you? It is a weird...
No, that's never been on the table. And like I said, this is the exact propaganda technique used in the 1950s, the same one. You're going to be forced to marry a black person if you allow black people to move into the neighborhood or to go to the same school as you. That's the next logical step. You'll be forced to marry a black person. This is all about scaring people. It's what it was always about. And by the way, I just want to put on record, I have nothing against boomers. I just want to say that. There are a lot of good boomers out there. Boomer, I'm not using it as a slur, not using it as an insult or anything. I'm referring to the demographic of people who were born after World War II, the era of the 1950s and 60s, the generation where there was a big baby boom. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not using it to be insulting. So there are plenty of good boomers out there. It's the mindset that was given to some people in this generation, a lot of them, during integration or when we were ending segregation. Keep listening to Pat here.
It is a weird world we're living in, and just, ladies and gentlemen, please know that your deeply held Christian beliefs are going to be under assault in every single phase of your life, and it's going to get more intense, and it's going to be more intense in Israel. So just get ready for it.
It's going to be more intense in Israel. There's another subtle prophecy. As things go on, as time moves forward, things are going to get more intense in Israel until it culminates in Armageddon taking place. This is absolutely absurd, right? Is it just me? Why is a gay person getting married to another gay person, two consenting adults? How does that affect your life? In what way does that affect you? It doesn't. Why do you care? I thought this group of people was for more freedom. I thought they were for expanding freedoms and limiting government. What happened to all that? It was nonsense from the beginning. They never stood for that. It was always used as a bludgeon to hurt the people around them. Mid-October 2020, right before the election took place, just like 2 weeks before the election, or 3 maybe. This is when Trump was trying his hardest to take control and keep it. Pat Robertson comes out and he issues this prophecy.
There's going to be a war. Ezekiel 38 is going to be the next thing down the line, then a time of peace, then maybe the end. But nobody knows the day or the hour when the Lord's going to come back. He said the angels don't know it, and only the Father knows it. So I'm not saying this is the second coming, but I am saying there are things that people have thought would be during a millennial time with the coming of Jesus that are going to happen in our lifetime.
He believed that Trump was prophetic, that Donald Trump taking control of the government at this moment in time was a prophecy being fulfilled, that it was the beginning of the end.
And the next thing is the election that's coming up in just a few weeks, at which time, according to what I believe the Lord told me, the president is going to be reelected. I'm saying by all means, get out and vote for whoever you want to vote for, but by all means, let your voice be heard. But it's going to lead to civil unrest of a great proportion, then a war against Israel, and so forth and so on.
So his prophecy is that Donald Trump is reelected in 2020. That upsets so many people that there's civil unrest, which leads to Armageddon. That was his prophecy. And, of course, it fell flat. For what it's worth, at the very end of his life, he called Trump unhinged and said that he lost the election and he should just accept that fact and that he was responsible for January 6th. He turned on Trump at the end. So take that for what you will. Never retracted anything that he said about the gay community. In fact, he doubled down on it. Even the misinformation, all of it. He stood behind it to the bitter end. So Pat Robertson, I don't wish death on anybody. I'm sorry that you lost your life, but I'm glad that you can't have a detrimental effect on the people around you anymore. And sadly, I feel like the world is a better place since he's not taking part in politics, since he's not taking part in Christianity anymore. I wish he could have pulled it together and been a better person when he was alive. But rest in peace, Pat Robertson. That's his legacy. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Let's check this. Apparently, Pat Robertson was pro-trans, though, despite being anti-LGBT.
This is David, who says, I work with 2 people who have decided that they are females. I know what the Bible says about homosexuality, but is it wrong to refer to them as females since they've had their gender status changed in the eyes of the law? Why would you have to refer to them as females?
I don't understand all that, but...
Doesn't understand all what? Like being trans?
I think there are men who are in a woman's body. Mm-hmm. It's very rare, but it's true, or women that are in men's bodies. And they want a sex change. And that is a very permanent thing. Believe me, when you have certain body parts amputated and you have...
Okay, that's not how it works. To my knowledge, things are not amputated like that. It is permanent, or at least partially permanent. you really don't want to turn back on that. But it should tell you something about how serious these people are when they go through. I mean, surgery is super, super, super rare anyways, right? I think that it's in like the thousands, like the low thousands, like 1 or 2,000 people per year or something that even get the surgery. It's mostly just social transitioning that happens. But even social transitioning, imagine doing that. Imagine doing it for a second. Think about it. You know, if you're a dude, you wake up tomorrow morning and everybody starts referring to you as she, as a woman. It would be confusing and cringy and terrible, and it wouldn't feel right. That's what it feels like to be trans. It's just not right. Something's not right with the situation, and it needs to be corrected. So you correct it by socially transitioning. I mean, it's a well-understood phenomenon, I guess. I don't know that that's even the correct word. Well-understood situation. As a matter of fact, we can look at people's brains in different types of scans. Men's brains and women's brains are different slightly. They have different levels of gray matter, from my understanding. There are different levels of different things in people's brains. And if you look at the brain of a trans person, more often than not, it correlates to the brain of the gender that they have switched over to. This is a real scientific thing that really exists and really has existed since the dawn of time. The Nazis famously attempted to stamp out any trans anything. It was like one of the first things they did was tread on members of the LGBT community. Anyway, keep listening to Pat here.
Mutated, and you have shot up with various kinds of hormones. It's a radical procedure.
It can be, I mean, by the time you're taking hormones, by the time you're doing anything beyond even socially transitioning, it's real. This isn't something people do lightly. Okay, this isn't like, oh, well, I feel like I'm a girl today, so I'm just going to be like a girl. No, you're coming out of the closet to people in your life that you realize you may lose forever when you socially transition. So this is bothering you so much that you are willing to do anything to correct something that doesn't feel right to you. Just think about how dramatic some people are when they find out somebody in their family's gay or somebody in their family's trans. Things don't end well for the gay or the trans people in the family, almost ever. I mean, suicide rates are through the roof because they're constantly being attacked and degraded and made fun of. This isn't something people do for fun.
I don't think there's any sin associated with that. I don't condemn somebody for doing that. But somebody who just says, well, I'm really a woman, I question the validity of that statement. But they say they're counted as...
Dude, stop burping on camera, okay? Just get it out, please.
Counted as female. You don't count somebody as female unless they really are, or male unless they really are.
In this instance, so this is a person who works with two people, so he doesn't really know their intentions or know their personal medical scenario.
It's not for you to decide or to judge. All right.
Okay.
Wow. It's not for you to decide or to judge. Fascinating. Well, I mean, that's kind of a little bit of a pro-trans take. I mean, it's not fully pro-trans. It's just like, I'm staying out of it. It's the most middle-of-the-road position that he could possibly take. It's not even middle of the road. It's still kind of on the right. It's still kind of anti-trans, what he said. So anyway, that's kind of interesting, though, that he had that position. I'm sure that he engaged in the moral panic against the trans community at the end, just like he did against the gay community, and just like he's picked up on every moral panic that's happened on the right since 1903 when he was born, or whatever it was. I don't know, when was he born? He was 93, so 1920. I guess he's born in 1920. That was close. Pat Robertson's also had a cameo in American Dad. Well, not really a cameo, but a mention at least. American Dad is a really, really funny show. I don't know if you guys watch that, but it's hilarious in my opinion. They've got some really top-tier episodes. In this one, Stan was trying to pass as gay, and it was a big lesson about how it's not something that you can choose. It's just something that you either are or you aren't. And so he's getting involved in these gay communities and hanging out with a bunch of gay people, and they discover he's not really gay.
Brett, tell this guy I'm okay. Tell him you can't have a log cabin event without me.
You're not invited, Stan.
What? Why?
Because your son stopped by the office today and dropped off this.
So it's me and hate-monger Pat Robertson. I met him at some party.
Anti-gay palooza.
I was just walking through.
Hosted and funded by Stan Smith. That's funny. It keeps getting worse.
It was just a momentary lapse of judgment.
7th annual.
My mind's a blank.
That's funny, dude. I love it. This is they've got some on-point episodes, especially when they touch on religious subjects. It gets really, really funny. So anyways, yeah, Pat Robertson is renowned for being anti-gay. That's like his big thing. H.W. Bush is the elder. W. Bush is the younger. Okay, thank you for correcting me. I just could not remember. My mind just went blank when I was trying to remember that. Super nice of Pat to die during Pride Month. Yeah, I know. What a time for Pat to kick it, huh? What a time for Pat to check out during Pride Month. Again, that's his legacy. Hatred of the gay community and the complete destruction of the Republican Party. And co-opting the Republican Party into evangelicalism, turning it into a religious wing, or a wing of Christianity, basically.